Hello, my name is Glenna Cummins, and I'm a program consultant with the Kentucky Department of Education. Welcome to today's webinar entitled Community Education Request for Application Informational Webinar. During today's session, I will provide an overview of the Community Education Initiative and information on completing the Community Education application. Due to the specific requirements of the application and the detailed submittal instructions, I strongly encourage you to review the RFA thoroughly and view this recording in its entirety prior to completing the application. The Kentucky Department of Education is issuing a request for application, or RFA as it is often called, to implement local community education initiatives for a maximum of 4 community education awards. Again, only 4 initiatives will be funded during this RFA process. I would like to remind you that community education is defined in Kentucky Revised Statute KRS 160.1553 and is a program in which a public building, including a public elementary and secondary school, is used as a community center operated by local organizations and government agencies to provide education, recreational, cultural, healthcare, and other related community services in accordance with the community's needs, interests, and concerns. When fully embraced and implemented, community education is a way of thinking about and organizing public schools for individual and community development. Community education is an opportunity for public schools to involve community members in the decisions and impact community support of public education by helping students acquire skills and competencies needed for success after high school, expanding the use of public facilities to meet the needs of all community members, providing programs and services that address the needs of all ages, creating a spirit of collaboration among community agencies, and working to improve home, school, and community relations. Each community is different. Therefore, each community education program should be unique and designed to meet the needs of the schools and the community. Community education initiatives have been in existence for several years. In 1985, the Kentucky General Assembly approved state funding for the Community Education Initiative. These funds were allocated to districts to hire a full-time community education director to implement the program. Currently, 89 districts receive Community Education Initiative funds. The 5 major components of the Community Education program are facility usage, lifelong learning opportunities, volunteerism and citizen involvement, preschool through 12th grade support, and collaboration. I will provide additional information on each component later in the presentation. There are 4 Kentucky Revised Statutes for community education. Each statute is included for you as reference on the screen. You are encouraged to review those statutes when completing your application. The solicitation schedule lists all milestones for completing the RFA. The Community Education Request for Application and the webinar you are viewing were made available on the Kentucky Department of Education's Competitive Grants website on June 10, 2025. You can submit questions about the Community Education Initiative or the request for application process to the email listed on the slide. The deadline to submit questions is June 17, 2025. Answers to the frequently asked questions, often called FAQ, will be posted on June 24, 2025. The deadline to submit the RFA is July 17, 2025, via email. The review of all applications submitted will occur between July 28 and August 1, 2025. Awards will be posted on or around August 7, 2025. Memorandums of Agreement, better known as MOAs, will be processed in August after the awards have been posted. The anticipated date funds will be available for LEAs is September 1st, 2025. The next slides will provide specific instructions for completing the application. Failure to follow the instructions outlined in the RFA will deem an application as non-responsive and will not be scored. Again, applicants are strongly encouraged to review the application and this recording prior to completing the application due to the specific instructions that must be followed for the application to meet the requirements for consideration. Current community education grantees are not eligible to apply for additional funding. So if your district or county has an active community education initiative grant, you would not be eligible to apply for this grant. State-funded community education initiatives are limited to one per county. Only public school districts are eligible to apply and serve as the project's fiscal agent. After the posting of the RFA, there may be amendments and/or updates, and applicants are responsible for monitoring KDE's competitive grants website for any amendments or updates to the posted RFA and supporting materials. You are strongly encouraged to visit the site regularly to stay up to date. Plagiarism is strictly prohibited. The use of artificial intelligence to generate application content will be considered plagiarism and is prohibited. The Kentucky Department of Education reserves the right to waive minor technical issues. As previously shared, applications will only be accepted from public school districts that do not currently have a community education grant and plan to implement community education activities countywide. If multiple schools are located within the county, then all school districts must be involved in the development and the design of the application. The grant serves the county, not just one district or one school. Only one grant per county may be submitted for consideration. If more than one grant from the same county is submitted, both will be disqualified and will not be scored. Again, the anticipated date to begin is September 1st, 2025. Community education grants are renewable annually based on the availability of funding and if all grant assurances requirements are met. KRS 160.157 established that a public school district may receive funding for a community education program if the following criteria are met. The district submits an application for approval by the Kentucky Board of Education in the manner and form prescribed by the Kentucky Department of Education. Submits a plan approved by the local Board of Education, which outlines the proposed community education program, including procedures for obtaining the involvement and cooperation of other agencies and groups in identifying and recommending programs for meeting locally determined needs. Establishes a council to assist in conducting community needs assessment and recommending program priorities to district leaders, and employs one full-time community education director. 2 or more school districts may combine for the purpose of qualifying for state funds if the local districts identify a district of record for purposes of receiving state community education funds, maintaining records, and filing reports. 2 or more districts in the same county that wish to apply for state funds must submit a joint proposal. Each community education grantee must submit an annual data report that includes an evaluation of the program and financial statement. Failure to submit the report shall result in loss of funding. Details related to the reporting requirements are generally shared in the spring by KDE staff. Grants will be awarded based on the availability of funding. The grant award is $20,000 and the district is required to provide a 25% cash match of $5,000. Grant funds of $20,000 and the $5,000 cash match can only be used for the salary and fringe of a full-time community education director. The district may provide additional funds, but the $25,000 must be used to hire a full-time community education director. Community education application requirements. The next several slides will provide information on how to complete the application. It would be beneficial to have a copy of the application to view as each section is discussed. The cover page is located on page 10 of the application. The first section is district information: name, phone number, email address of the superintendent, the finance officer, and the grant writer, and any other collaborators. The superintendents must read and complete the fields located on the cover page. The cover page requires the superintendent's signature and a notary signature. Applications submitted without the superintendent's signature will not be considered. The assurances are listed on page 12 of the RFA. Superintendents must read the assurances carefully to make sure the district has the capacity to adhere to all of the assurances. The superintendent's signature is required to verify that they have read and agreed to adhere to each of the assurances listed on this page. Applications submitted without the superintendent's signature on the assurance page will not be considered. The Community Education Director's job description is the next document to be submitted. The description should, at a minimum, include the following: job title, list of responsibilities, education requirements and qualifications, and professional experience. The narrative plan is the main section of the application. The narrative plan must be double-spaced and not exceed pages, so you will need to be concise and intentional when completing the narrative. If the narrative exceeds 10 pages, the additional pages will not be considered, so please keep that in mind when completing the narrative plan portion of the application. The needs assessment is the first section of the narrative. The needs assessment is an analysis of the community needs and serves as a guiding framework for the district's community education program. A description of the schools to be served and how those schools will benefit from the community education program must be included in the needs assessment. The narrative must include a description of how the proposed program will address the required components of the community education initiative detailed on page 3 of this RFA. Scoring value for each section of the narrative is 10 points. You need to answer each question and provide a detailed description of how the proposed program will adequately address each of the components. Facility usage is the first component. When completing this section, consider and address the following questions. How is your facilities currently utilized in the community? What is your plan to increase community utilization of the facilities? Lifelong learning component is the second component. When completing this section, consider and address the following questions. How is the district using resources or facilities to encourage lifelong learning? How will the community education director increase the use of resources or facilities to encourage lifelong learning? Collaboration is the next component. When completing this section, consider and address the following questions. How will the community education director plan to facilitate effective coordination of internal programs such as Family Resource Youth Service Centers, dropout prevention, volunteer, and after-school programs? How will the community education director plan to facilitate effective coordination of external programs such as businesses, industries, community organizations and agencies, as well as individuals to engage in community education problem solving? Volunteerism and citizen involvement is the fourth component. When completing this section, consider and address the following questions. Describe how the Community Education Director will create meaningful opportunities for parents and community members to volunteer their time and expertise to support schools and community needs. Describe how the Community Education Director will be actively involved in recruiting and training volunteers. Preschool through 12th grade support is the final component. When completing this section, consider and address the following questions. Describe how the community education program will be aligned with the district school's comprehensive improvement plan. Describe activities that will be implemented that support academic needs, transition readiness, and opportunities for students from preschool through 12th grade to be active members of their community. The next several slides will provide additional information that may be helpful when addressing each of the required components in the narrative. Component number 1 is facility usage. Community schools serve the entire community and offer an array of activities for all ages. The Community Education Director must be actively and intentionally involved in the planning and implementation of the activities and/or events. These activities and events should be implemented outside of the normal school day, before and after school, and during breaks and holidays. Activities and events should be designed to support the identified needs. Programs may include both educational and enrichment activities, programs, or events. Schools may not always be the prime location for certain programs, activities, or events, so alternate locations may also be utilized. Examples of possible alternate locations are listed on the slide. This slide provides some examples of activities that may be implemented at schools or other alternate locations. These are just examples and may or may not meet the needs of your schools or community. The next component is lifelong learners. Learning begins at birth and continues throughout one's life. Public schools are the basic education agency of the community and are appropriate to address the education needs and interests of the community. Learning opportunities should be based on the needs identified in the needs assessment, community interest, and inclusion of all groups. This slide lists several examples of activities that support lifelong learning opportunities. The third component is collaboration. Successful collaboration is dependent upon intentional, well-facilitated coordination. Community education directors assume the responsibility for ensuring continuous progress is made toward resolving district, school, and community needs. Collaborations with district, school, and community agencies are essential to implement effective activities, programs, or events to meet the needs of the district, schools, and community. Collaboration includes both internal and external coordination. Internally, community education directors serve in many capacities with other school-based initiatives. Community education should be reflected in the Comprehensive District Improvement Plan, or CDIP, to ensure effective coordination of programs, activities, and events. Externally, the Community Education Director collaborates and provides linkages with business, industry, community agencies, organizations, and individuals to meet community and school needs while addressing local issues. These activities, programs, and events are outside the school district but within the community. The Community Education Director should serve on community boards and advisory councils to support community initiatives and activities. This slide provides several examples of internal and external collaborations. Remember, the Community Education Director must be actively and intentionally involved in the planning and implementation of the activities, programs, or events. Component number 4 is volunteerism and citizen involvement. Community education should create meaningful opportunities for parents in the community to volunteer their time and expertise to support school and community needs. Research demonstrates that when parents and other community members are engaged in the educational process of students, students are more successful and student performance increases. Community education directors should be actively involved in recruiting and training volunteers. The last component is preschool through 12th grade support. Activities should be implemented to support academic needs, transition readiness, and opportunities for students from preschool through 12th grade to be active members of their community. Community education directors must serve all students in the district, not just students at one school. The community education program should aim to provide activities and programs that give students opportunities to utilize local resources and become respected leaders in their communities. Examples of activities that support preschool through 12th grade are listed on the slide. Again, these are just examples, and all activities, programs, and events should be based on identified needs for your schools and community. The next topic we will review is the formatting requirements. Failure to follow the formatting may deem your application non-responsive and will not be reviewed, so make certain to adhere to all formatting requirements. KDE suggests double-checking to make sure your application meets all formatting requirements prior to submitting to KDE for review. The narrative must be double-space. Letter size must be 8.5 by 11. The font must be Times New Roman, 12 point. No compressed, narrow, or light fonts are allowed. Margins for the narrative sections must be 1 inch on all sides, top and bottom. Text within charts, graphs, and tables must be in Times New Roman, 10-point font and single-spaced. Bullet lists must be single-spaced and must be in Times New Roman, 12-point font. Charts, graphs, bulleted lists, and tables must not comprise more than 20% of the total narrative. And all text must be in black. No colored texts are allowed. The grant application must include the following in the order listed on the screen to be considered for review, and each component must be clearly labeled within the application. The community education cover page with the district superintendent's signature is required. The collaborating district form. This form is only required if 2 or more districts are collaborating to submit a joint application. Community education grant program assurances with the superintendent's signature is required. The community education director's job description is required. The narrative plan must not exceed 10 pages and must be approved by the local board of education. This is required. Any application submitted without the required documents will be deemed non-responsive and will not be reviewed for consideration. Please review this section of the application to make sure you have followed the instructions for submitting the application as required. You must scan or save the completed application in its entirety, including signatures, to a PDF format. Save the original application as CE26 and your district name. For example, CE26 Woodford. Scan or save a blinded redacted copy of the application in its entirety to PDF format. Save the redacted application as CE26, your district name, and the letter B. Example, CE26 Woodford B. Email both applications to the email listed on the slide. On the subject line of the email, type CE26 and your district name. The original and redacted application should be sent in one email if possible, but if necessary, the application may be sent in parts. All parts must be received with the date time stamped by the deadline of July 17, 2025 by 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Applications received after 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on July 17, 2025 will be deemed non-responsive and will not be reviewed for consideration. Do not carbon copy others on the application submissions. Do not send Google Docs or documents from Google Drive. Each PDF attachment must be less than 10,000 KB or 10,000 MB in size. Please work with your technology staff to ensure the correct file size. Files that are above the size limit will not be reviewed for an award. Blinding redacting is the removal of identifying information from an application. Identifying information is district name, school name, county name, and city name. Names of individual signatures should not be blinded or redacted. Redacted copies should be completely redacted electronically using black highlighting or X'd out using the Find and Replace feature. An example is on the slide. Please review redacted copies before submitting to ensure all identifying information is redacted and all required pages and attachments are included. Redacted copies will be scored as received. All reviewers will be trained for this specific competition, and they will evaluate applications using the RFA and scoring rubric aligned to the criteria established in the RFA on pages 8 and 9. Recommendations will be based on independent reviewer scores. Questions related to the request for application, community education grant should be directed to the email listed on the slide by Tuesday, June 17, 2025. And all questions and answers will be posted on Tuesday, June 24, 2025.